Adult animation is a really funny thing, isn't it? With kids' cartoons, it usually varies on how long it ends up lasting. With adult cartoons, though, there are two outcomes, and only two outcomes. Either the cartoon gets cancelled after only one or two seasons, or the cartoon goes on until the end of humanity happens. There is no in between. Very rarely is there ever an in between, and I find that hilarious. Of course, though, this all ties to a much bigger debate on how long should a show last. What should be the normal average lifespan for a cartoon, for a show in general? Because obviously getting cancelled after only one season isn't exactly a very healthy lifespan for a show, but neither is lasting for 36 seasons. I wish I could elaborate further on this debate on how long should a show last, but unfortunately that's not what y'all are here for. Y'all clicked on this video for a very different reason. Very recently, Velma, the highly controversial HBO Max show, was cancelled after only 2 seasons. Velma premiered early last year, and almost immediately it was panned by critics and audiences alike. Everyone hated this show, and yet it got a season 2 this year despite that. And once again, everyone hated it. Everyone criticized how bad it was. My personal relationship with Velma is a very interesting one when compared to other people. Because of the hate that Velma received, I suddenly regained an interest in talking about bad cartoons. So I kinda gotta respect it, unfortunately. I gotta have a little bit of respect for Velma. Despite all of this though, I would not make a video on Velma until October of 2023. By that time, the backlash towards Velma had completely died down, and it wouldn't come back until season 2 was announced and it premiered. The basic consensus that I had was Velma was a bad show, undeniably, but I don't know, I've seen worse stuff, to be honest. Keep in mind, at this time, only the first season of Velma was available. Season 2 had not come out yet. Of the 10 episodes that were in season 1, I only watched the first 3 episodes and half of season 4 before I decided to call it quits. Not because the show was unwatchable or anything like that, but because it was just uninteresting. Watching all of these different garbage cartoons has made me realize there are different kinds of bad. There are different variations of bad. You have funny bad, you have offensively bad, you have boring bad. It's a lot of stuff. And Velma, I'd say, falls into the third category. To be fair, I'd say this was on part because of my higher tolerance for edgy comedy when compared to the average cartoon YouTuber. That's not to say that I think Velma is funny or anything like that. You can acknowledge that a show isn't funny and also tolerate its humor a little bit more if you're able to like this style of humor when it's done right. But also there's the fact that literally everyone had already talked about Velma prior, and everyone already made a video about why it was bad, why it was the worst cartoon ever made and whatever. And so it's what could I put into this discussion that's new? What could I say about this show that no one else has already said about it? I'm not gonna lie, I briefly considered making a fake positive review for the show because at least it would be something different, at least it would be something unique, something you've never seen before, and then that was it. I just left it at that. And then season 2 came out and I made a video talking about it. Well, actually no, I didn't make a video on season 2 itself. I didn't make a follow-up video watching season 2. I've never seen season 2. I am most likely never gonna watch season 2. I don't see any reason to watch season 2. I made a video on its announcement, going over my thoughts on it. And so here we are now with the recent news that the show has been cancelled. I'm aware that I'm a little bit late on this topic, but I really don't care, to be honest. I'm talking about it now. That's all that matters. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm not surprised that this show got cancelled. It's not just the fact that it's bad. I mean, okay, yeah, it's kind of the fact that it's bad, but it's also just it doesn't feel surprising to me because this ain't my first rodeo. I have made videos on short-lived adult cartoons that only last one season, and then that's it. They just pull the plug. Whenever I watch the final episode of a one-season adult cartoon, I can't help but get this just off feeling watching it. It's like it's clear that the episode is setting up future things for a season 2, but we never got that season 2 because the show was cancelled. You watch all 7 episodes of Alan Gregory and then that's it. There's no more Alan Gregory. There's no season 2. And it's like, I'm not necessarily complaining that it never got a season 2, but it's just this really off feeling. I guess it's also just the idea as well that like any of these shows could have become the next big thing. I guess this does kind of tie into what I was saying earlier, that like adult cartoons either last only one season or they last for ever. Somewhere out there, there's an alternate universe where Alan Gregory is still going on to this very day. Somewhere out there, there's an alternate universe where Rick and Morty was cancelled after only one season. And with Velma, I knew it was going to be a short-lived cartoon. I did not see this having any sort of longevity, and this isn't 100% because it's bad, it's just I've seen stuff like this before. I've looked at cartoons before that are like this, where they were cancelled after one season. In all honesty, I think this show was really lucky to have gotten a second season. Even with that second season, I just knew that Velma would inevitably join that family of short-lived adult cartoons that will end up being forgotten about. And yes, I genuinely believe that people will forget about Velma as time goes on. It was the most heated cartoon last year, and maybe this year as well. And then, like, now that it's been cancelled, people are just gonna move on from it. It reminds me of that other widely despised HBO Max show that came out last year with The Weeknd. I remember everyone was talking about how bad this show was when it was running, and then it got cancelled. And ever since then, I've seen no one talk about it at all. It's like it never even happened. Like it was retconned out of existence. If this show was still going on, oh, you know for sure people would still be talking about how bad it is, but it was canceled after one season, and so now in 2024, people have just kind of moved on from it. It was the most talked about show in 2023 for all of the wrong reasons, and now it's just this weird, forgotten failure. I genuinely thought that this show would do serious harm to The Weeknd's career, but it didn't. I thought it would affect his reputation, but nah, bro's doing fine. People still love his music. He has a new album coming out very soon, and the moment that drops, everyone will 100% forget about this show. I'm sure in the future people will remember this show as like this weird failure, but I don't see this becoming like an all-time like infamous stinker or anything like that. And I fail to see why Velma won't end up having the same fate of just being this weird, forgotten failure of a show. Now, there's a bit of a discourse going around recently with this show's cancellation. You'd think everyone would be celebrating and throwing parties that this show was cancelled, but nah, that's not necessarily the case. Obviously, there are people that are celebrating, but there are also people that look at it a bit differently. So I believe like someone made a tweet that went viral. I don't know the exact tweet, but it said something along the lines of like, we shouldn't be celebrating the show's cancellation because there were people that put time and effort and whatnot into making the show. Like there were artists that worked on this show and they don't have jobs now because the show got canceled or something like that. And so now there's like this whole debate going around of like, what should we do in regards to Velma's cancellation? What should we do when a show gets canceled? And it's something that I have thought of quite a bit. On the one hand, I find it interesting how, like, it wouldn't be until now where people acknowledge that, yeah, people put time and effort into making garbage media. I always found it very interesting how when a good TV show gets canceled, people bring up, oh no, it shouldn't have gotten canceled because people put time and effort into making it. But then when it's a bad show that gets canceled, no one acknowledges people put time and effort into making it. That detail all of a sudden becomes irrelevant if the final product is bad. Honestly, as far as bad adult cartoons go, I think Velma is one of the higher quality ones that I've seen. There is clearly talent within the artists and animators of this show. This is an adult cartoon that has a visually appealing art style, which is extremely rare to come across. Like, honestly, how many of y'all can think of an adult cartoon that has a visually appealing art style? Let's see, from the top of my head, there's Clone High, yeah, you get the point. It almost feels like a cruel joke in a way, you know? The one time we get a visually appealing adult cartoon, and it's garbage. It is straight up trash. It might seem like I'm making a big deal out of something so insignificant, but when you watch a bunch of adult cartoons that look like this, it becomes a lot more understandable as to why I would look at Velma as this breath of fresh air for adult cartoons. On the one hand, I find it hypocritical that we don't acknowledge that, yeah, people put time and effort into making something when the final product ends up being bad. There are bad movies, bad cartoons, bad whatever, anything like that, that people put time and effort into making. And I feel like, on the one hand, we shouldn't 100% ignore that. We shouldn't only acknowledge that people put time and effort into making something when the final product is good. On the other hand, though, something having time and effort put into it does not automatically make it good, nor does it make it exempt from criticism. I don't want this to become a get-out-of-jail-free card to make everything exempt from criticism. You should be allowed to criticize a bad movie, a bad video game, a bad cartoon, etc., even with the knowledge that people put time and effort into making it, because sometimes a piece of media is just bad. Now, if a piece of media has a toxic work environment behind it, you know, the people working on it are overworked and underpaid and are going through crunch, whatever, that's a very different story. But as far as I'm aware, that's not the case with Velma. For the time being, it seems like Velma had a perfectly normal, healthy work environment. Trust me when I say there is a huge difference, an absolutely huge difference between a bad movie that went through development hell and or had a toxic work environment behind the scenes and a bad movie that's just bad because it's bad. Even if it had a perfectly normal, perfectly healthy work environment, it's still a bad movie. The final product is still bad. There is a big difference. When a movie has a toxic work environment, regardless of whether the final product ends up being good or bad, you will feel bad for those that were affected by the toxic work environment, while also condemning those that allowed the work environment to be toxic in the first place. And then sometimes, though, you have something that didn't go through development hell, didn't have a toxic work environment, and yet the final product is still bad. And then it becomes a bit of a different story in that case. On the one hand, yes, it sucks that the admittedly talented animators and artists behind Velma no longer have a job, and considering how reviled this thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being blacklisted from the animation industry. But on the other hand, though, this doesn't mean, oh, we should reevaluate Velma. Velma's actually good now all of a sudden. Again, I don't want this claim that, like, people put hard work and effort and whatever into creating something. I don't want that to become a get-out-of-jail-free card for any piece of media. I don't want people to use that as an excuse to defend any piece of media, no matter how bad it is. If I watch a movie and I think, wow, that was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life, and someone goes up to me and says, no, you can't say that because people put time and effort into making it, I'm gonna be like, okay, so it's still the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. The fact that people spent time and effort making this movie doesn't make it good now all of a sudden. It doesn't make me reevaluate the movie. It doesn't make it better or anything like that. And I know this might come off as a highly controversial thing for me to say, but if you do really terribly at your job, then you kind of deserve to be blacklisted from the industry. You kind of deserve to be criticized in a way. I'm just saying, if a cartoon has bad writing, I will criticize it for having bad writing. If it has exceptionally bad writing, I will criticize the writers as well. It's as simple as that. There are shows where the animation and art and whatever is so bad that it's like, nah, these people can't work again. I'm sorry. Velma gets a pass because there's clearly talent within the artists of that show, but if the artists and animators behind our cartoon president never worked on another cartoon ever again, I would not complain. I would not complain at all. If I ever made a cartoon as ugly and as visually unappealing as The Prince, I deserve to get blacklisted from the animation industry. I'm sorry. I make a show that looks like this, it unsurprisingly gets canceled after one season, and you think I'm gonna find work again? You think I'm going to find more work in like another cartoon? You think I'm gonna ever be able to make another cartoon? Hell no. That's never gonna happen. And then to draw in more controversy, let's use Has-Been Hotel as an example. Again, I will not deny there is talent within the animators and artists of Has-Been Hotel. Has-Been Hotel is another adult cartoon that has a visually appealing art style. I wish I could tell the animators that other colors exist besides red, white, and black, and I wish I could tell them that no, not every character has to make the same eating grin copy and pasted, but besides that, I will not deny that the animators and artists behind Has-Been Hotel, they are talented. I will not deny that at all. I am unfortunately not as merciful towards the writers of Has-Been Hotel. This is unfunny. I'm sorry. Y'all complain about like Modern Family Guy or whatever, and then you watch this like this is somehow funnier. I'm sorry, but like the worst episode of Family Guy is probably like 100 times funnier than the least bad episode of Has-Been Hotel. When it comes to season 2 of Has-Been Hotel, the writers either have to get their together and step up their game or continue making unfunny garbage and end up getting blacklisted. Because I'm sorry, but goddamn is this show awful with its writing, awful with its humor. I understand that for a lot of these it's about money, you know, you get paid to make something. No one sets out to make something bad on purpose, you know, that's the case with a cartoon as well. I mean, if it's like some stupid internet thing made by a few people in their basement, then it's likely that yeah, this was made intentionally bad. But when you have a more proper cartoon that airs on national television, it becomes a lot less excusable. That whole debate of like, did they make this bad on purpose? It becomes a lot less apparent when the show is a proper cartoon with a massive team behind it that airs on television. I'm sorry, but that $12 per episode paycheck cannot be worth it if the final product you're working on looks like this. I understand sometimes it's all about getting the bag, but there has to come moments where you think to yourself, is it really worth it to get that bag? Is it really worth it? And then sometimes you get a show like Fairview where it's like, I want everyone involved with this show to never work on another cartoon ever again. I want them blacklisted ASAP from the industry. Animators, writers, none of y'all get to have another career. Y'all up big time. Never cook again. In order to make the backlash over everything that I've just said less severe, I'm just gonna say that this is only for like an extremely small minority of shows that I've looked at. You would have to seriously up big time in order to convince me that nah, you gotta get out of here, you gotta be blacklisted from the industry. I'm sorry. If it softens the backlash for whatever reason, I'll say that like Velma isn't on that level. I mean, like the writers on the show are like, they're debatable, I guess. The animators deserve to work on other projects, hopefully better projects. Mindy Kaling is likely gonna be unaffected by this. I don't think she's gonna become a homeless person or whatever because of the failure of this show. Maybe canceling this show would help improve Warner Bros. Reputation just a little bit right now. If only Disney would do the same thing with a certain movie they're working on, wink wink. But the main thing that I want to say is, I don't want this whole thing that like people put time and effort into creating something. I don't want that to become like an excuse to make things that like you can't criticize anything anymore. Because no duh, every piece of media in existence has time and effort put into it. Until AI generated cartoons become the norm, every cartoon that comes out right now, regardless of quality, has time and effort put into it. And that doesn't mean it's good. I could look at something like the Slim Shady Show and acknowledge, okay, I guess people did put time and effort into making this. Animators, writers, voice actors, whatever. I guess they did put time and effort into creating this, but you look at how poor quality the final product is, and you have to really wonder, was it worth it? Does it really matter that they put time and effort into this? I mean, look at the final product. It's garbage. It's indefensible. Sometimes you can't pull out the, oh, but people put time and effort into it excuse. Some stuff just cannot be defended like that. But yeah, I just wanted to make a video going over Velma's cancellation and my entire thoughts on it. This is something that doesn't really surprise me. As is the case with a lot of other short-lived adult cartoons, Velma is likely just going to be a flash in the pan. People that called this the worst cartoon ever made when it was running are likely gonna forget about it now that it's been cancelled. I'm sure at some point Hoops was considered the worst cartoon ever made when it came out in 2020, and now you see no one acknowledge its existence anymore, because it got cancelled after one season. If it was still ongoing, it'd be a very different story, but alas, that's not the case. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Adios.